Welcome everyone to the League of Goddesses interview series. This platform is for sharing insight into the tools, methods, and thought processes that the most badass women, and sometimes men, in the world use to attain their dreams. Our amazing guests will share their intimate, tried and true practices that have taken them decades to create and compile to help compel themselves to attaining their biggest dreams and hopefully yours as well. This is the real shit that I wish I had known sooner. Today's guest is Kim Witczak. She is an international pharmaceutical drug safety advocate and speaker with over 25 years of professional experience in advertising and marketing communications. After the sudden death of her husband due to undisclosed drug side effects of an antidepressant, Kim became an advocate in pharmaceutical drug safety issues. She co-founded Woody Matters, a nonprofit dedicated to advocating for a stronger FDA and drug safety system. She co-created the international multi-disciplinary conference, Selling Sickness, People Before Profits. And now that I have told you about her accomplishments and credentials, let me share with you why I am personally ecstatic to have her here today. I actually met Kim through Bliss Champions, and I immediately knew she was a beast. Not only is she extremely intelligent, passionate, and loving, but she is also tenacious as fuck and full of bravery. I mean, the woman took on the FDA. So without further ado, I am so excited to introduce Kim to you. Kim, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us. I am so happy that you are here.
Oh, thanks, Alicia. I'm really excited to be a part of this.
It's going to be a blast, and I'm so excited to share your awesomeness with all of the wonderful ladies here in the league. If you are fine with it, then I am just going to go ahead and jump right in. Is that good?
Sounds great. Let's go.
Awesome. So the first question that I always like to ask is, what are you most passionate about teaching or sharing with other entrepreneurs or just women in your life?
Well, one of the things I'm most passionate about is that if you have a dream, you can do it, right? If there's something that you want to pursue, you can make it happen. I know with myself, I have done several different things, whether it's been in my career in advertising production or also starting nonprofits. Well before I got into the work that I'm sure we'll dive into more, I helped bring a nonprofit called Free Arts Minnesota to Minneapolis from California, and I saw it was a vision, and through my, I guess, perseverance and passion, I was able to bring something to life. And that would be something that I would love to share with people, is that if you have something that's inside you, don't let it die and sit there. You can make it happen.
I love it. What is it about that subject that just lights you on fire? Why helping people attain their dreams?
Well, I think for me personally, I realized that I did it. I think when you go really back to it, like being somebody who never thought she could do something like that. And when I was younger, I didn't really think about doing this, or, does it really happen? What makes somebody pursue it? But I will say this, I've always my entire life been inspired by the real people stories that have taken on something that was wrong and made it right. I think about, I was one of those kids that loved watching those movies that were like somebody had like a horrific thing in their life and then they brought change to the world, or they took on something, they took on an industry. So I think I've always had that little bit of something in me that was driven to do something, but never really knew that I could do it, right? And so I always say that I've learned through this time that truly, if I can do it, you can do it. And that would be my message that I would love to teach, women, my nieces, anybody, because I think, life happens, and we all start out as creative beings in life, and then something happens, life happens, people are told you're this, you're that, and all of a sudden your story becomes I can't, and you just kind of accept life as is, and then there's something that happens and you really know that deep down inside you could do it, that there is something that lights you up.
Oh, I love it. It just kind of gets, with the daily grind at times, almost snuffed out, but never really gone. It's always in there. So
Right.
I love what you said. Can you tell us how you gained your expertise? Because you're not saying this stuff without having to accomplish some big ass dreams. So where did you gain this expertise and how did you create it or learn it?
Well, I always say that sometimes life happens, life circumstances can bring upon us our greatest purpose and passions. And I will say the thing that it was a horrible situation that actually happened to me that, and I'll tell you the story in a second, but it was through that experience that I realized that I had it inside me. And so then you start connecting all the dots from when you were a child and, your experiences, and you realize that life all of a sudden is really, if you look at the other side of a painting or some kind of weaving, you would see that it's a tapestry, and you'll see all these like tattered strings, but you realize that all of that creates this beauty that's on the outside. So I would say that through the greatest pain in my life, I found life and I found this purpose that I never knew that I had. But I guess that I never knew that I was able to do something. I didn't, I learned the self-confidence that I originally gave my power away, but it came back and I was like, wait, this is in all of us, in all of us. So I look back at, if you want me to tell my story, do you want me to quickly?
Sure, welcome to.
So it happened in 2003. My husband, I was married for almost 10 years. My best friend, he had just started his dream job with a startup company as vice president of sales and was having trouble sleeping. And he was a guy who always needed 8 hours of sleep, but he ended up going into his GP, his doctor, and was telling him he was having trouble sleeping. And Woody was sent home with a 3-week sample pack of an antidepressant Zoloft, and was told to him that would help him take the edge off and help him sleep. And so, looking back, he got it for insomnia, which is not uncommon for entrepreneurs, you wake up in the middle of the night, right? Anyways, fast forward, I was out of the country. The first 3 weeks, Wood was on this drug. And in New Zealand on a advertising shoot, and I come back and Woody's telling me his head's outside his body. And, we call the doctor. We're like, you got to calm him down. And a week later, he's dead. And during that whole time, in the deepest part of me, this is where I say, when you go dig deep, the deepest part of me, I knew something didn't make sense, because Woody was not a guy, he was not depressed, he didn't have any other mental illness, but 5 weeks later, he took his own life, right? And literally that, all of a sudden it became like all gloves off kind of saying, because literally my life changed in a moment. But I knew intuitively in the deepest part of me that something didn't make sense. The only thing that was new in Woody's life was this drug that was added. And so literally that night that he was found, there was a front page article in our local paper, the Minneapolis Star Tribune paper, that said the UK finds link between antidepressants and suicide in teens. And almost instantly, my life fell apart. The life that I knew, my brother-in-law started, doing all this research and came to me, goes, I think I figured out what happened to Woody. And it became like, it wasn't even an option. It was, Woody was dead. And so we started going out. We realized that the FDA held hearings back in 1991 when it was just Prozac on the market. They were having hearings on these people that were taking their own lives. And they did nothing about it. They told the drug company to study suicidality, and the drug company never did, Eli Lilly, and the FDA never followed up. Then fast forward, you get these other new companies, Pfizer with Zoloft and GlaxoSmithKline on Paxil, and they never looked at suicidality and the suicide warnings. So that became like a mission, because I'm like, if it can, like Woody, if it could take on, like make Woody, and it was a side effect that they kept from the public, if it could make Woody, who loved life, he would walk into the room and you felt him. You felt his energy everywhere. And if it could make somebody like that, what can it really do? And so that became literally my mission. and to go start getting on a plane, going out to DC. I've gone there so many times, but really the purpose was to get warnings put on these drugs. And so I look at all that and look back and you might go, how did you do that? And I don't feel like it was an option. And yet when I actually now, years down the road, it's been several years since, and I've done other things, and I start to look back, I'm like, wait, I've kind of always had this in me, but sometimes it has to be something that happens to us that like lights a fire, which, obviously this was my biggest match ever to light a fire. But then you start realizing, wait, if I can do this, you start realizing it's kind of how you can apply the lessons and the learning to all aspects of your life.
Right. Kim, I have to say, just not because I love you, but I do. Thank you for being vulnerable and sharing that story. I can only imagine how deep that goes. So for you to take the opportunity to share it with us so that we can get a real view of like, hey, this is how it happened. This is what sparked me. I really appreciate that.
Sure.
Anyone who watches or listens will too. So thank you for that. And I think what I heard you say, and it was just like, boom, when you said it, is I didn't have an option. Your love for Woody and what you saw happen, because this amazing guy that you knew was just full of life and all of that. I think that's the key. How do you feel about that? To me, what you said was the conviction was 100%. There was no option. So do you think that that's the magic ingredient for every dream that we want to attain? Is it that when you give yourself no option, then you make it happen?
Absolutely. I saw it, witnessed it firsthand more than ever. It wasn't an option. I mean, I remember staying up till 2, 3 in the morning, and I would still get up to go work out because I'm a morning workout person, but it didn't matter. It didn't matter because I needed everything. I was absorbing it. I was reading, I was writing letters. I was, imagining what needs to happen next. So I feel like if it's something that you really, really, really want, it has to be a no option.
I know that's such a simple concept of like, hey, there's no option, but I think that that's the magic ingredient. And I think that we so often give ourselves the out, like, oh, I don't feel good today. Or, oh, this person needs me to do this, or this person needs me to do that. I know I'm guilty of it. Mm-hmm. And so I just keep hearing that said by you, though, that when you decided that this was it, there wasn't any stopping, Kim. It was going to happen. And so it's amazing to kind of see that. And then now you have this amazing body of work that just propels you forward. Basically, if you can take on the FDA, you can do anything. Just like, Kim, you just get out there and kick ass. So if you had one piece of advice that you could pull from this knowledge that you've gained, just a tip to share with others, what would be your biggest takeaway?
I would say one of the biggest takeaways I have is really become your own advocate and don't give your power away. There's so many things that we have inherently, whether we've been told it, we've absorbed it culturally. It's the way it is, like, oh, somebody in the doctor in the white coat, they're the experts. And this idea of the experts being outside of you, really, they live inside you. And so when it comes to your health and your well-being of your family, your loved ones, really it means take interest. Don't see things, don't see things as face value. Like, don't take things as face value. Go and dig deeper, ask questions. Don't be afraid to challenge, and don't be afraid to question, and assume that somebody else knows better what's for you. So that would be my biggest takeaway in this world of healthcare.
I love it. And it's so funny because I literally just had this exact conversation with Charles this morning. It wasn't about healthcare. It was about business. And we were reviewing, which we like to do quite often, our biggest mistakes. because we look for like, where's the pattern? Where are we fucking it up? What can we do to adjust and pivot? And we literally said, you know what our biggest mistakes are? Is hiring someone that has a title and thinking that they know best. And even though they might have, more education than you, more experience than you, they aren't you, and they don't own your business or your life. So you always want to be open and accepting of information, I think, but that understanding that you're fucking badass and you have intuition and you have understanding of the things that revolve around you and they're your responsibility. Because every time that we've done that, so say we'll hire a CFO or something to that effect, it's like, what happened here? And you think you've hired an expert, a CFO, a doctor, whatever their title is. But the second that you give your power away, like you said, to someone else, that's when shit goes wrong. So it's not to say don't align with and appreciate other people's efforts, but it is to say fact check. Make sure that you're in alignment, because this is your life, your business, your family, those types of things.
Absolutely. I feel like it's a data point, right? Just like it's, that's why you do hire, experts in the business, or you hire branding people, or you hire people in finance. But at the end of the day, you're ultimately still responsible, right? Whether it's your business, whether it's yourself, your family's health, or whatever, a passion, you can go and get all that, gather all that information and expertise, I'm going to put in quotes. But there is that sense of intuition, and really that would be something else I would say, is to like learn to lean on and trust your little intuition, that voice that's in your head that's like, or in your heart, that's like, something doesn't feel right, or something's like, this is it, and I'm going to go counter to what somebody else is telling, the expert is telling me. So I think you're absolutely right. It comes down to trusting yourself and not giving your power away.
And with that comes 100% ownership, right? This is, the buck stops here. So if I'm going to be 100% responsible for my health, my family, my life, my business, then you better be 100% bought into your decisions. So
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it's you have hit so many big things here. Trust, ownership, just trusting yourself. And it's just intriguing to see, because I'm piecing together how you attained all of these things. It's like, oh yeah, I'm seeing it. You're building it here. Beautiful. Okay, so thank you so much for sharing those tips. I think they are phenomenal. The next question I really want to ask you, and I'm very curious about this because I don't think we've ever discussed it before, but in your journey thus far, I know you have fucking amazing years to come, and I'm so excited to be your friend and be part of those experiences with you. But up to this point, what would you say your apex moment was in your career?
I would say, I was originally going to say, like getting the black box warning put on antidepressants, because that became a focus. But I think one of the things that I think were one of the coolest was I was asked to testify in the U.S. Senate when it was Ted Kennedy and Obama was he was one of the senators, Hillary Clinton, all the big ones. And it was like such a great kind of like, wow, how did I get here? How did I get here? Because I never liked politics or anything to do with any of that, but Woody did. And so I kind of feel like it was this world coming together, the full 360 of, to be in that place, to be invited, and you see it on TV, you see people being questioned at hearings, and now here I am sitting there at that table with former, like the FDA commissioner, and at this hearing, and there were all the drug industry there, and I was like, wow, to be invited. And you don't just get invited. Behind that invitation was a lot of work and a lot of commitment and a lot of time. But so I would say that was probably my biggest. And then that also has given me, when you have those kind of moments, it's a time, and it's a moment in time, right? But it's something that you can kind of keep going back to be inspired by and be able to use when you have other times that you're like unsure, or you start going through, settlement, or like even for me in my other kind of more of my creative business, I use that and go, wait, I can figure something out. Like if I have a really hard, difficult, creative problem that I have to solve and find the right team involved, I'm like, if you can figure this out, Kim, you can figure this out. So I think that's when you have those moments, it's like, oh, it gives you the confidence for something the other.
Girl, you were telling your story and I just got goosebumps. I was just like, damn, I can imagine. And I'm so glad that you chose that moment, because I think you're right. I was guessing it would be the black box label, because that's, I mean, dear God, what more do you want? But I think that was just a phenomenal thing to hear about. Can you tell me, in that experience, what did you learn from that level of attainment? Because like you said, you were surrounded by some major politicians / celebrities, whatever. And I'm imagining that getting there was just like, holy shit, when I was 20, I never thought I would be. And you were there not for a celebrity, you were there for your brains and the effort behind what you did. So like, to me, that's even so much more of a huge accomplishment to be invited for those reasons. So what was the level of attainment that you felt?
Well, if I even step back before, there were some lessons even that I learned before I even got invited to there. There was another big hearing, and that was more in the House, on the House side of things, not in the Senate side of things. And I was not invited, somebody else that had not done all the work. And I remember being really kind of bummed, like I show up but that wasn't what I realized. And I quickly realized that there are things and disappointments that happen before you get somewhere. You realize that this was where I was supposed to be. And that disappointment led me to this point. And so that was one thing, is like, don't ever think that a previous disappointment, that means your game is over. That is just the start, and that might be your motivator, or there might be a greater purpose and a greater reason of where you need to be. And so I realized at that time, this was a much bigger issue and a much bigger space to be at, is at the hearing that I was at. So that would be one thing. The other thing is I had to, that invitation came because it involved a lot of work, and it involved also strategically working and about the people that you're talking to. And it's more than just about the story. It was about ideas. And I realized that, I had creative ideas that I was going to offer up other than just telling the story. I wasn't invited because of the story. And I say that because a lot of times, people that are out there have something horrible that has happened, but then where do they take it? So I believe that moment was also a combination of all my previous advertising business, of working together and collaborating with people and figuring out what the bigger message is. And so it's kind of like, oh, I see how this kind of all is starting to evolve. And so those would be my big lessons that I would say I learned.
So your story should be your catalyst, and your solutions is what's going to grab and envelope people. Is that right?
Absolutely.
To sum up what you just said, I'm like, I think that's what you said, and I love, love, love it. Because
oh my God, I wish I would have said that, Alicia. That was exactly it.
You did say it. I just summed it up, because you know me. I'm like, what is it short and sweet for me to stamp into my memory?
Yeah.
I love it. You're so right. The story is the attention grabber, and then your solution is what makes you special. So that's the solution and the work behind the solution. It can't just be empty words. Wow. Yeah, Kim, you were like, oh, the perfect person for it. Okay, I could sit here and just revel in how amazing you are, and I will try not to do that too much. But let me move on. What I would really love to hear, and we haven't really chatted about this before either, is I would really like to learn about your childhood. Who was Kim before all of this, before your big story? Take me back to the beginning. Where did you grow up? Do you have siblings? That kind of stuff.
Great. Well, I think it will all play into this, where I've been and where you've introduced me at. But I grew up in a suburb of Minneapolis. I have my parents and my sister. I have one sister. And it was a pretty typical childhood, being involved in sports or being told to be involved in sports, meaning it wasn't really what I wanted to do, but I think, I wanted to do art and stuff like that. But, I still played sports. I went to high school, college. But, I look back at, you would think, was I always this way? And I realized I wasn't. I wasn't. I kept a lot of things inside. I kept a lot of things behind my throat, and didn't speak my mind. I was not a pot stirrer. I was not somebody who would take on an issue that was really big. I was pretty insecure, about like, what does life look like, and really speaking my mind. But, it's funny. I go back to even like my high school had closed. And I think I learned perseverance and never quitting, and like that poking the hole, like I'm going to keep going until I can get what I want. I think I learned all of that starting when I was young, whether it would have been a boy that I wanted to ask and like, hey, do you want to go to Sadie Hawkins? No. And then I'd be like, how come? How come? You just keep, why not? Why not? And then there was a high school that closed, and I really wanted to go to the other school, and I was just nonstop, relentless, and I was creatively thinking of ways for my parents, like, because they wouldn't get us an apartment in the other school district. So we had to be thinking of ways, and I always was bringing ideas to my mom and dad, like would not take no for an answer. So I think there is a part of like all of that is who made me who I am today, that relentless, and also not being afraid, but I always knew I had it inside me. And then I told you earlier that I loved inspirational stories, like people that are doing something. I was always motivated by that, and I would sit and watch those movies where other kids are probably watching something else. But I love being inspired, because I feel like if I'm inspired, then I know it's in, especially when it's just an everyday person that does something. I'm like, whoa, all of us actually have that potential, right? Not one of us is more special. Even those people that I thought were special, they started out as just somebody like me who did something.
Yeah. Isn't that crazy? Because I think the more that Charles and I progress in our businesses, the more we realize like there's no difference between the people making 1 million, 10 million, 100 million, 1 billion. We're all people. We've all only had the same time here, right? And somebody might be 50 or 80, but we all get this ticket, and none of us know when our ticket is up. But the difference between success and not having success is doing, right? Doing, growing, educating yourself. And I think really a lot of it is like self-reflection. Like, who do I want to be? Who is it that makes me happy? And then being that person, which no one can do for you. It's like, hey man, it's all up to you, right?
100%, 100%. We look so many times out there, right? Like when I get enough money, or when I get that new job, when I start my new career, when I get the new boyfriend, and you realize then you think, oh, then I'll be happy. But it starts here. It starts here. It starts with who am I? Who do I want to be? How do I want to show up in the world? Because you're right. None of us know when our next breath will be our last.
Yeah. It's kind of crazy. I also have this weird feeling. I'm like, no one goes before they're supposed to. Obviously, I don't know if that's true, but that's what I believe. I'm just like, oh, when you're done, I feel like we probably get to go somewhere fucking amazing. Yeah. Once the job is done, we've kept our appointments with whoever it was that we were supposed to have appointments with here, and then just like a one-way ticket out to somewhere awesome.
Oh my gosh, I have to say I just got chills all the way down my body, because I say that all the time. Like this summer I had a health scare, and I remember like saying, God, like I'm not ready. And then I was thinking, yeah, because you maybe aren't, like there's so much more we're supposed to be doing, Kim. Like you're not ready. But I do think like even with losing somebody like that, right? I kind of feel like in some ways it had to be somebody like Woody who wasn't depressed, didn't have a history of depression or anything else to be my like catalyst. And it had to be somebody like me. And so that story could have only happened with us.
Yeah. It's so, now I have all of the goosebumps. I'm like, it's so amazing that you were able to take something that would have crushed lots of people. You had a wonderful marriage. You had an amazing man. You had a husband who was just fucking awesome. Not a husband who you're like, man, every other day I'm worried about him. I wonder if he might not be here when I come home. Like, you just had such an amazing gift there, and you were able to enjoy it for the appointment that you guys had, and then use it as a catalyst to save God knows how many lives. And so if that's what Woody was put here for, and like, first of all, thank you, universe, for him. And then second of all, thank you, universe, for you, for not letting it crush you and just being the fucking brave ass, strong woman that I know. Because I mean, I don't know how I would have responded to it, but the way that you have is so beautiful. And so many of us unknowingly owe you a huge thank you. Thanks, Kim. Because those warnings and that information, it is not easily found. Even with all the work you've done, it's still not easily found. So I can only imagine, back in early 2000s, late 1990s, I never would have even caught it. So thank you for that. And thank Woody too. So I won't get all emotional on you. Sorry.
But I do think there is something. So I have done a talk about, are you a survivor, or you are a victim, survivor, or thriver? And I feel like those are three very distinct kind of personalities, or distinct, like all of us. I could have easily been a victim. A lot of us have victim can be like, you had a really bad, like, you hated your haircut, and it created this like story that you've told yourself, and everything comes back to that story that I'm, whatever it is that you're telling yourself. Or a survivor means that you survived it, you've done it. But a thriver takes it a step further. And I feel like every one of us has this ability, and it's a choice that we get to make. Where do you stop?
Oh, I love it. I think that is so true, because sometimes people just want to be a survivor. You all know the song, I'm a survivor. And you're right. Like, I definitely don't want to be a victim. I had to learn that story. Like, oh, that's not a fun story to play. And when you're a victim, you give away all your power. So you might as well just be like, here, take it, do whatever you want with me. And then a survivor, lots of times it's like, man, the battle wounds, they're vicious. I did that one too. Yeah. And then when you come out and you're like, nah, man, I'm a thriver. Thrivers are the ones who are able to give back to their community and actually make something positive out of what they experienced. So that's such a good, like, not analogy, but what do you call it? It's like a 3-step thing. Like, hey, man,
framework.
Framework. What am I going to be in this scenario? Because we're all presented with scenarios, and we're presented with them quite frequently. Not always as large of a scenario as we've just been discussing, but I mean, how many times do we have the opportunity to be a victim? Pretty frequently. Just like you said, it could be as simple as a haircut. Yeah. Like, hey man, what story are you going to tell yourself? How are you going to frame your stuff and make it a personal choice? Whether you want to be a victim here, do you want to be a survivor, or do you want to thrive? Yeah. And I'm definitely using that one. Thank you, Kim. I'm like, I love it.
It's yours.
No, yours, but I will borrow. Thank you. Appreciate it. Okay. So that being said, I have like just maybe 1 or 2 more questions about your childhood, because it was so intriguing to hear. What do you feel like your childhood was like with your sister as a kid? I mean, who was Kim as a child?
I keep going back to, I feel like I didn't know who I was. I feel like there was that little bit of trying to figure myself out coming into this place. Like I was always, I had a lot of friends. I was always popular, but I feel like I was, even with my sister, my sister and I, she was a couple years younger, and she'd always like want to, she was the more athletic one. She was more, all of this, but we always, and we were different too. Like, I liked girly things. I always wanted to play dolls or Barbies or dress up, and she was like, had nothing to do with it. But we had like we still had this like great friendship of being different. And yet I was always admiring her because she didn't care what people thought about her. And I feel as the firstborn, I kind of cared what people thought. And so I realized that that was a huge part of something I had and still have to, has been a part of me that I'm like, oh, we got to get rid of that. So anyway, so those are some things that I, have been really self-reflective, and love looking back at those times that I used to think were, that I wasn't, like I was uncomfortable with, but I realized that's who makes me who I am today. Like that little girl, Kim, is part of who I am. That little girl, Kim, the teenage Kim, that's all of who I am. It's part of me. Doesn't mean it has to be by any means, because that's a story if you let that little girl, drive you. But it's a part of them. So be compassionate and like loving to that person.
Mm-hmm. I love it. That's a very interesting connection that you've made, that maybe as the firstborn, there's more emphasis put on what people think. I wonder if that comes from, and I am obviously not a therapist in any way, shape, or form, but I'm curious if you have so much attention as the firstborn and your parents are so focused on you and everything that you do, you get so much feedback from. Mm-hmm. So I'm wondering if there's a connection between those two. And, as you have more and more kids, your parents don't even realize you exist. So
I was going to say, I think you're right. I remember taking a class in high school, and I always loved it was like, I think in birth order. Mm-hmm. And we talked about it in psychology. And there is something with firstborns. There is what you were just talking about. There's also the same thing, like, oh, don't fall. Watch where you're going. Like, there's that extra bit of attention because you're the first. And then the second comes along, and then they're like a lot more lenient. And then who knows what the second one's thinking about the first one. Like, you get all the attention. Mom, dad like you more, whatever it is. And then, like you said, as you go to like the third, fourth, fifth, like, at that point, like, I don't care about any of you guys. No.
At that point, they're just I think my mom said 3 was the sanity barrier. So after that, you might as well just pop out as many as you want because you're already crazy. And I was just like, oh boy, I will stop before that. Like young, hearing that, I wasn't quite sure if she actually meant it. And now that I think about it, I'm like, even old, I'm still not quite sure if she actually meant it. I'm like, did number 3 really steal it all? And it was over.
I've heard other people who have that same philosophy after like whatever that point is. Yeah. They might as well have more because it's just at this point, like it already is chaos. So let's just have more chaos around the house,
I give them props. I can't. Like, not my personality style, but yeah. Funny. Okay, so thank you for sharing about your childhood. I really enjoyed that. And I feel that you're right. When you get to learn about, where someone came from and what they've done, it really pieces together who they are today. So it's beautiful. Can you now tell me where you feel like you have found your strength from? Where do you pull that from when you need it? Because you've done some pretty major things, and I know that there was strength needed. So where have you found it?
I find my strength in my faith. Mm-hmm. That has been a huge part of my life from the beginning. I'm not sure I guess I always had like church in my childhood as a child, but really it was after the night after Woody, I think it was his funeral, I was laying downstairs looking at all the photos that had been put together. And I remember like gripping my heart like this, like wanting to pull my heart out. And I remember saying, God, use my pain. Take my pain and use it. It does me no good. So I think that was just my first place that I leaned into. And I wasn't really angry. And then I had, so for me, I think my faith and believing that there is something way bigger than us and our pain and whatnot, that there's a bigger world, that we're just a part of it. So that to me has been, even, I don't have it on right now, but I often wear, and I wore it every day when I was doing all my work. I had this little necklace with a mustard seed, and it was this idea that it's the faith of a mustard seed, and all you have to do is say, move, mountain, move, with that much faith. And I remember looking a lot of times, if that's how easy it is, and I am still questioning, look at how big it is. It's not even, it's tiny. That's all I need. So that really was a lot of that self-talk in that realm around faith.
Yeah. That makes sense. You said something and it just sparked a little bit of curiosity in me, and I hope that you don't mind if I dig a little bit deeper. You said that you weren't angry. Were you ever angry about the scenario?
Anger, well, first of all, anger is not an emotion it has never been part of my life. I probably go more inward or stuff like that. So anger, I would say I wasn't angry ever at like God and what happened. I kind of made peace with that early, but where I was angry at Pfizer. I was angry at the drug companies. I was angry at the FDA that you guys knew something and you didn't tell people. Like, you knew. And so that's where I channeled my anger into something. I think I channeled, so maybe I was angry, just not ever angry at Woody or God, but I was angry at, you knew something and you didn't tell people, and people's lives are being torn up because of all your idea of just wanting to put money over people, right? So I guess grief and anger was channeled into this work. I was using both to help heal myself through the journey and through that process. But I was never angry at Woody. I feel like I always felt like, even though I don't want to use that word victim because I don't like the word victim, but he was kind of just the
stand.
Yeah, that was just knowing, that he was just he played that role. If this was a big play, he played that role of the victim, but he didn't live his life as a victim.
Yeah. Wow. Thank you for sharing that, because I think a lot of times some of our greatest accomplishments are fueled by, like you said, some of the biggest impacts in our life. And I know lots of times when people are impacted and it appears to be negatively, there is anger associated to that. And that's definitely something that I know I've focused before into attaining my dreams. So if you're out there and you're going through something that's painful and you're angry, I would just say that, hey man, sometimes there's righteous anger. Like, there was a reason, Kim, for you to be mad. And instead of just being mad and letting it eat you up, you redirected all of that power and force to accomplish good. Mm-hmm. So that's amazing that you were able to do that. And I feel like people need to know that that's okay too. Sometimes things have to be done because they're right. And I'm glad that there's people that are willing to stand up for that, because it doesn't always feel good. I know being angry doesn't feel good, but there's so much power behind it if you can use it for the good.
Absolutely. I was just thinking of the word, and I really like the word you use, fuel. And so in some ways, that's what, I did, is it was my fuel. It was like, that's where I was channeling. But because it, something like that, anything like, to your right, like for other people who are watching this that are having points of being angry or something happened to them, it's a mind shift. If there's a way you can get past that point of being angry and blaming somebody and taking it and go, all right, even if it was their fault or somebody, you can go, oh, no, we're going to use this, and we're going to use this to like prove you wrong, so you can use it as fuel. I love that word, fuel.
Yeah. So basically you can use your anger as an angry victim. You can use it as an angry survivor, or you can use it to what, Kim?
Fuel and channel your anger and be a thriver.
Yep. Oh, I love it. Use your anger to thrive in the positive way. So intriguing. I'm loving listening to this, because I feel like lots of times there are, intense stories in our lives, and the MO or the comfortable thing to do is just be like, well, let's just not talk about that. That part hurts. And that part, it's not so great. And that part we tend to feel very vulnerable about sharing. And Kim knows I've shared my story with her, which definitely makes me feel vulnerable. But in listening to yours, I realized, well, we did the same thing. Yours was to help massive people in a very different way than I've done, but mine was to help people too. but we both directed our anger and decided we weren't going to be victims and we were going to thrive. And it's just really intriguing. So if you are going through something that's difficult and hard, then you need to pick who you're going to be and then channel that in the right way, because there's a lot of power behind it, I think.
Oh, 100%. Like, and I think there's also something about being willing to share your story and be vulnerable in a place where it may not be, because it's so uncomfortable. Like, I from the beginning have been telling the story, and I somehow was given a gift where I could shut off my own personal, like this, when I'd go home and want to, claw out my heart. But I think there is something about when you tell your story, you give somebody else permission to tell their story. And then you realize, wait, I'm not alone. So even on just before doing it and using it and channeling it and all that, you realize that you're not alone. Like, I'm not the only one that's going through something, or has gone through something bad. And then to your point, like, we both have used it in the same way. It just manifested itself differently. But we both used the same kind of anger. I'm not going to be a victim. No. We're not being victims. And you used it. So it's just how it looks. And each of us as individuals are different. Our stories are different. And the way it'll manifest is going to be different.
Yeah.
So I love that I got to know you too. So.
You're fucking awesome. I'm just like, okay, I say it all the time, but no, I feel like we just kind of stumbled across something that just in this talk that is such a big deal, because there is so many times that, especially as a woman, and not to say men don't have scenarios where they could feel a victim too. I feel like it just tends to happen a little bit more frequently with women. And so if you know what to do with that anger and with that power and how to harness it, then man, that's phenomenal. Because I do remember with myself, and I don't know how you felt, there were times when I didn't know what to do with it. And if you keep that anger in and you don't harness it, it'll kill you. So it's just like, it's dangerous, but there's so much power behind it. It's kind of like lightning, you have to be the conductor and then push it out and do whatever you're working on, focus and make sure that it's for the good. And then the outcome, like you said, our outcomes are so different, but of course they would be. However, we're both extremely successful and happy and have gone through major things, but we learned how to grab it, control it, and not force, but direct it in the correct way to attain something positive rather than eat us alive.
Absolutely. I think a lot of times when you look at disease and you look at our bodies, when we hold things in, disease, right? Disease is dis-ease. Something somewhere, it's held in your body. So if you don't get it out, right, it will manifest in a different way. So I know for me, I'd much rather manifest what I did and what you did than let my body get sick and be destroyed because I let it inside. So, and kept it inside and didn't do anything about it other than just keep playing that tape recorder over and over and getting more and more mad. And you can see yourself like inside like this. Mm-hmm. So it'll manifest something, right? Mm-hmm. So what is it going to manifest? In your body is a disease, or is it going to be manifested something out there that can be positive and channeled into something?
Yeah. It's like, what are you going to turn it into? The universe brought it to you for a reason. Now, what can you create with it?
Right.
Phenomenal. Okay. I'm like, oh my God, I'm loving this. And I'm going to have to think about it more later. That being said, Kim, do you have a mentor that you just love? Maybe it's a mentor that you have now. Maybe it's one that you had a different, in a different part of your story. But I would love to share with people who your mentor was and what they taught you that you were just most impacted by.
I have had a couple key mentors over my life. One was back when I was graduating from college, and I was one of a couple people that were selected by, he was the chairman of Leo Burnett, which is a big ad agency, and he was on the board of our college. And he picked 2 students, and he would take your resume and send it out to all his network. And so it was a big process to get that, to be one of the 2 that was selected. Anyways, I ended up meeting one of the gentlemen that ran another big agency in Chicago. And he was my mentor because he helped, like he tore everything about, he tore my reasons for why I wanted to go into advertising. He questioned everything. He was in my face. And he taught me during that whole time of working with him, he taught me that I'm coachable. I didn't come in there, and I realized the importance of being coachable. So that's what this mentor did. And when I asked him, how can I ever thank you? I will never forget. And I still like get emotional when I think about John. He said, you know how you're going to pay me? Because I don't want anything. Here's what you're going to do. He said, when somebody comes and wants to talk to you, you're going to take the time and you're going to meet with them. Because that's how this business and this is how it pays forward. Doesn't mean if they don't take your advice and they don't want to, do anything, then that's on them. But if you would just say yes, because you never know who the next person could be, that could be like the rising star of something. So I love that advice, and I still to this day use it. I will meet with people, but I'm fascinated that people, I'm opening up my Rolodex, and giving them contacts, and they don't ever follow up. So that is fascinating to me. So that would be one that sticks in, that was a really huge mentor of the importance of being coachable. And then another one would be finding somebody who's unlike you, right? When I put on the Selling Sickness Conference in DC, my co-organizer was a woman, Leonore Tiefer, and she's an academic. That academics scared me, truthfully, because I don't have all those letters behind my name, and they all thought, I walked to these conferences and they don't see any letters and they think I'm an idiot, and she became my mentor in that, to gain this confidence of playing in a space of looking at experts differently, right? And the importance of looking at experts differently, and being able to also harness my creativeness and my wanting to talk a million miles, and other people and the communication styles and how different they could be, and how important it is to really kind of understand who you're talking to, and getting a point of their style, because I love to chit chat and go, how's your day? And she was like, give me this information right now. She did not have time. And then we broke back and sat and were able to have conversations. So I learned from her, and the importance of communication, figuring out communication styles, but also she helped me really break through my own stories of being afraid of people who had, letters behind their names, and were what I was always intimidated by in my space, like the doctors, the academics, the scientists. So those two are probably my biggest mentors for different reasons, and the lessons that I learned from them, and the importance of it. If I didn't have them, you think about it, I don't know what my life would be like.
Yeah. That's true for all of us with our amazing mentors. I think my life would be over without at least one of mine. Amazing. You said something about your first mentor that really caught me. You said that he taught you that you were coachable and how important that was. Can you tell me, and I know I'm putting you on the spot, but are there things that you look for in people and you give them that stamp in your own mind, they're coachable and I am willing to invest my time in them? Because I think it would be really helpful for people to hear, hey, when a mentor sees these things, it intrigues them because they feel like the investment here is worth it.
Mm-hmm. I would say for this willingness, and kind of the people who are actually asking you for information, right? Or you can see that they're curious. So they may not actually have a conversation. And they could be somebody that you're just observing, that you realize that they're constantly always looking to better themselves, whatever that looks like. It could be that they are looking for the best, coffee to drink. Just making that up, but something that they're curious enough and they're driven by curiosity, because I feel like people who are curious and ask questions, even in a setting that you might be noticing that they're asking people in other departments or, other people in your company or outside your company, that they're curious and they ask questions. I think questions, and they're always wanting to learn, because I think those are kind of elements of somebody who's coachable. Sometimes when they get super defensive, a lot can be seen from observation, even without a personal experience, but just observing how people show up in group dynamics. Because I think there's nothing better to be coachable, right? Some of the best, I just think of our experience. We just had this last week, and I had two experiences that one of them was afraid to even, I was rocking. I didn't even know, this is where I'm saying the observing something. I was rocking in a chair, rocking, because I was being asked questions, and it was my energy in my body that I was uncomfortable. And literally, Patrick, put his foot out and it's like, stop rocking. And he said, he goes, afterwards, he didn't know if I was going to take that the wrong way. But really what I noticed is because that he was noticing that I was nervous, and that moving was making, I wasn't literally stopping to actually be in my body and be uncomfortable with the answer that I was being asked, or the question I was being asked. And I really think that is something that he observed in me. And I am so grateful that he did stop me, because it's really one of those pivotal moments of the importance of like really watching what I was doing in my body. And I know I was uncomfortable, and I didn't realize how it was showing up physically. So that was something that I am so grateful that he did, which was observing. He didn't ask me. And so that's where I say I like to observe people to see if they're coachable. And then, of course, there's the people who'll come in and ask you, would you be my mentor? Because I find something, very, like say somebody came to you and said, Alicia, I love the way you are you heard me say to you, I love the way you're organized and the way that you are so driven. And I was even actually, you were my mentor without knowing you were my mentor. But I channeled you the other day. But I think that's also another key. If somebody comes and asks you if you would be their mentor.
Yeah, I think that once you reach maybe a certain level of, what appears to be success, people do ask that question. And I don't know how you are, Kim, but I'm very selective with my time. So I do look for people who are coachable. And then I watch. I'm just like, oh, if I say something, do they do it? If somebody that values their time isn't going to reinvest into someone who they can obviously see doesn't value it. So if you're looking for a mentor, that's really something that you want to work on and make sure that you're open to hearing what people's thoughts are. And then you're willing to put into action when people give you a recommendation. Kim, just like you with Patrick, I'm sure once he did that, stop, you didn't move again, right? Because you were like, oh, got it.
Yeah. But I think that's the importance of being coachable. Like, you look for it, you can observe it, finding somebody, but also, are they going to take your words? Like, somebody like you, Alicia, if somebody comes to you, you are very successful, that if you're giving them advice, which to even get to that point because of not having, your time is limited, you want to see that that it's being used, or otherwise why do it? Like, if they're not going to take, some of your words and ideas and implement it in their own way, it might look a little different than the way you give it to them. But otherwise, that's the importance, I think. And if you are being coached or being a mentee or a mentor, is, do you do the work that comes from it? The advice that somebody gives you.
Yeah. I think one of the most fun things that I've been able to see in the whole process is, first, you're a mentee all the time. I didn't even understand what a mentor really was until I was in my 30s. And I was just like, holy shit, I wish I would have had one of these since I was, 8. Because all it is like somebody who sees potential in you and then helps you jump up on their shoulders. And as much as you're willing to do the work to get up there, they're normally willing to not only get you there, but if you're great, they'll put their hands there and let you stand on those too. So having a mentor and a great mentor is one of, in my point of view, the biggest gifts that you could ever receive. It's what I feel a true love is. It's just like, wow, when someone really cares to see you grow and attain your dreams, that's true love. But for me, the coolest part, and Kim, I don't know how you feel, is at some point you start becoming a mentor to people. But then the coolest thing is, it's just like, oh, this is just a big circle. Like, I'm a mentor, I'm a mentee, I'm a mentor, I'm a mentee. And it just is a wonderful gift of giving and sharing in this world. And I think it brings me so much joy. I never realized it could be that way. How do you feel? Do you have anybody that you get to share that experience with now that you enjoy?
Absolutely. I do. I have a couple of people. And then I also think about just literally my nieces, the girls in my life, that importance of having somebody like me that I wish I had. When you just said, like, when you were an 8-year-old girl, you would love to have had that person to actually help raise you up, that sees potential. So it is a circle, because you give, you get. Like, you give, you get. It's like this, and never
give, right?
Yeah.
As much as I try, the universe doesn't let that happen.
Yeah, that's what the world. It's you always heard that, like, and they even say it like in grief groups. Mm-hmm. Get out and volunteer, give, because in that you'll find healing. And so you realize it's just kind of maybe one of those principles in life. You give, you get, and it's that yin yang, it works together. And even the mentor mentee thing, it starts somebody younger, but then you realize, wait, if I give, then all of a sudden somebody new comes in. It's like the universe just works that way, and somebody else comes into your life that you want to learn from. And then I think you have to be brave enough, like, if there's somebody that you really want, I think it's okay to ask them. I love what you've done and accomplished. Would you ever consider being, talk to me about this? And sometimes it might be a short term, sometimes they might be long term, but I feel like there's the courage to ask. Mm-hmm. That's really important.
I agree with that. And I also think whenever you're asking, if you can be specific, like, hey, will you mentor me on my life, that's a little bit of a big one. Yeah. But if somebody says, hey, I really love the way that you do this or that, or I really admire, or you've accomplished this thing and that's something that I want to accomplish, usually it's very easy for someone to mentor somebody in something that they feel like they did a good job at. So that's also something that I like to tell people, like, hey man, if you see somebody who's kicking ass at what you want to do, then ask them about that. Because usually that's an easy way for someone to give. And then also for you to get amazing tips and feedback. So I love doing it that way. So cool. Okay, so now that we've mentored up, which I absolutely love, I'd like to know from you, what is something that you had to let go of, or maybe move on from, or even surrender to in your life to be where you are?
I think old stories, old menus that I've told myself about myself. I think that would probably be the biggest thing that I've had to let go of, is old menus. Old, you can't, you're not, that those little voices, you're not this, not. Like, I think that is something, that I've had to figure a way to ignore them, but there's, to push through. I would say the stories that I've told myself of who I am or what I am.
Mm-hmm. Is there a pivotal moment that you had, or something that you learned, or someone told you and you were just like, that's it, no more of this?
Yeah, I keep going back to a story that I had in, I think it was like maybe 8th grade or 9th grade. It was one of my English teachers that told me I had to write a paper, right? And on the top of the paper, it just had the big letters with red marker, MTP, missed the point, which is like the worst. So it was supposed to be like a report on a book I read. So at that point, I made that my story, that I'm not a good writer, good reader, like good communicator. And that became part of why I kept my mouth shut. A lot of times afraid to answer because I probably wouldn't have answered the question right. So I'm not going to answer. And yet then when I would be in things, I'd be like, I knew the answer. Like I knew it, like, because I could feel it inside. Mm-hmm. So that point became part of my story that has carried through, like even when I would go to these conferences, and then sometime I had to go, no, wait, like you have this opportunity. You have to, I don't care. This is the conversation I'm having in my head. You got to do it. It doesn't matter. You got to commit. You got to come over that fear. You're going to have to even if you bumble the question, you had the courage to go be the first person that stood up in line to ask this person a question after a presentation. And so that was something for me that has been really pivotal in letting something go. And then when you trace it back, you're like, wait, that was from that stupid teacher in English. Like that, are you kidding me? This is like what has held you back, Kim. And you start asking those questions and I think that's the importance. And then you realize a lot of times that's just all old, something silly, but it became so powerful in holding me back. And so when you asked me the question of when I was a kid and I went like this, mm-hmm. It's because I knew I had the answers inside, but I didn't speak them because I was thinking, well, I clearly can't read and comprehend what I said, all because of that. So I think that's the story that I have had to let go of. And especially in the work that I do now is, are you kidding me? I am like, I got this. But, otherwise, can you imagine? Like, I wouldn't have done any of this. Like, imagine that story was still ruling my life.
Wow. Wow. Yeah, that was phenomenal. Wonderful answer, Kim. I love it. And when you think back, probably just like that teacher had no clue, like the impact. Because I think so many times we all perceive things so differently. And so we have to have grace, right? Yeah. For each other, our fellow humans. Like, dude, I'm sure I've said something bitchy like that before. You just don't even think about the impact sometimes that you have on others or how someone might interpret what you're saying. Just so intriguing that you can create a story for someone and they might hold on to it. So that's a great lesson.
Absolutely. The importance of it too, because I'm sure if that teacher probably would never even remember, that was probably like, oh yeah, you missed the point. Like, no, this was what it was about. Like, but we never had a conversation around it. So it was left open for interpretation. Yeah.
Wow. That is another great point. If you have to give somebody, feedback that could be hurtful or taken, in a hurtful manner, don't leave it up for interpretation. Tell them exactly what you mean.
Totally.
Yeah, because I could have easily just been turned right around and been like, you missed the point. The point is for you to teach me.
Right. Like, and that's so true. Like, and I think that is our responsibility as we get older too. If somebody says something, you may want to go and ask.
Yeah.
I just make sure I understand this.
Yeah. Oh, I love it. That's phenomenal. Perfect. Okay, so now it's going to be a little bit girly, but one question that I always love to ask is, can you tell us what some of your self-care rituals are? I just feel like it's a fun thing to learn about someone, and then, sometimes I pick some up, like, oh, I like that one.
Well, I would say self-care, one of the things that is really important to me is that if I'm not physically moving and working out, it impacts my mental health. So, like, that is a huge part of it. For a long time, it was yoga. Mm-hmm. And that was a big part of every day, my routine. But I realized through that, like, I had a pretty big breakup that I had to get in and like physically move it out, right? So I started boxing. So I think working out has been really important. I think what we fuel ourselves with, eating, like I never really realized the importance of food until these probably last really, and this is all after Woody died, like the importance of what we put in our body. So that is important. Getting sleep, enough water, I've learned that the importance of water, because you can get dehydrated really quick. So I make sure now I have my nice bottle, but
Yeah.
I make sure I drink at least almost 64 ounce, big gallon throughout the day. And I think another part is meditation for me and spending time. I call it my morning routine, and I get kind of crabby, or I forget how important it is. Like when, just getting back from a trip, I don't, I'm out of my routine. So then I didn't spend my time that I normally do, which is I read a page in kind of this devotion faith book, and then I do a lot of writing around it, whatever the theme is, and I just let myself just basically throw up on a page. So I think that has been that is really important, because that's where I realize I can work out a lot of those, if I have fears, if I have my negative self-talk and things like that, because really realizing at the end of the day that we are physical, spiritual, and mental beings, and you can't do one and ignore the other two, that it literally is one being, you, but you're made up of all those parts, that I think you have to take and really take each of them seriously.
Yeah. Or it's like a trike that has like one flat tire.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
And of course, then I love, doing masks and baths and my essential oils. I'm like addicted to my essential oils. So it would probably be all of that would be important.
A good mix of it.
Mm-hmm.
I like it. You're like, and then all the girly things.
And then all the girly things.
Candles.
Yep.
Candles for sure.
Candles. Well, I do. I usually always travel with candles, because I love just the dark and just the little flickering. And one time I was at everyone will never forget, I was in at a hotel in LA, and I wanted to create this environment of candles. So we called down to the housekeeping. I'm like, no, I want every candle you guys have in the hotel. And they brought up literally probably 30 candles.
Holy cow.
Yeah, it was crazy. Awesome. We got the sunset marquee. It was awesome. And we created this whole vibe, but I'm like, no, lights, it's all about lighting, guys. It's all about lighting to set the mood. Like, you got to have the mood right. And that's what I did. So
that is phenomenal. I didn't even know they had candles at hotels. I'm like,
you just have to call and ask.
Yeah, you're like, hey, you send me all of your candles.
Literally the guy, I stayed there a lot, but so they brought up all these candles, but we created this whole, we didn't want any lighting. I had some friends there, and we didn't want any natural lighting, or not that overhead lighting. Mm-hmm. So lighting's super key too for
you. Relax. Yeah. Oh, that makes so much sense. I'm not traditionally a candle girl, but I do love them. It's just I'm lazy and I don't like them. But maybe I need to work on my lighting situation.
Put that on your list.
I think so. I'm like, ooh, that might be nice to at night just have natural light instead of your overhead bright stuff that we always do. And maybe it would be a more peaceful progression to bed.
Yeah, absolutely. Have somebody light them all.
Oh yeah, Charles is like, oh God. If you're gonna do it big. I guess that's how we operate in Texas. So Kim, I go from no candles to 100.
I was gonna say Alicia, and then Charles is gonna go, don't ask me, I don't want to be the one lighting it.
I don't want to light it out. I love it. All right, Kim, I have to tell you, thank you so much for being here. I just had such a great time. And as we go to wrap up the final portion of the interview, I wanted to ask if there is maybe one final thought, maybe something that I didn't ask you about that you feel would just greatly impact others and you'd like to share.
I would say, I would leave one thing, and that it doesn't matter what it is in your life. If you want to do something, you got to show up. Mm-hmm. Magic does not happen unless you show up. Magic happens when you show up. That's when doors open, people appear, but you have to be a part of it. You got to show up.
That's so true. And what you show up with is the most important thing, right? Show up at 100%.
Yep.
It's the conviction you were talking about earlier. Just man, It's got to be that way.
That's when the doors open. That's when magic happens. That's when, and I would say also just really thinking about what is it that you want to see happen? Like, what is it? Like, I go back to free arts. When I brought free arts, it was a piece of paper that came to me of this project that they were doing in California. I'm like, oh, I want to bring this here. And I saw it, I could feel it. And so that idea of visioning and then partnering with people that have skills that are not like yours. I like to think that, I'm a visionary, but I think that importance of, I could never have done the things that I've done if I didn't have a partner who was the detail, the organizer, the one that was the driver, that was all of that, and the importance of a team.
Yeah. Oh, you killed it with that one. Because isn't that the most important thing? Like, we're not here alone, and we are all in a team of some sort. And knowing what your really strong points are also shows you what your weaker ones are and who you need to bring onto your team. Right?
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely.
That's the way to slay it. It's like, build an amazing team. I love it. I love it. Kim, thank you so much again for joining us and sharing just so many valuable, authentic truths. It has truly been an honor to have you here on the League of Goddesses interview series. And I look forward to continuing to watch you grow. I know you have so many exciting new things coming up, and I am just happy to be a part of your life and to support you and cheer you on as you do it. If any of our listeners would like to connect with you, what is the best way for them to reach out?
The best way is you could reach my website, kimwitczak.com, and send me an email through kimwitczak.com.
Awesome. We'll make sure that we put your website on the video. That way people can just click it and it will be easy. For all of you who have joined us live, thank you for coming. And for those of you who will watch this in the future, we hope that you enjoy. Please visit my website to sign up for an invitation to the next League of Goddesses interview. And until next time, everyone, live an extraordinary life. Bye. Thank you, Kim.
Thank you. Thanks.